Gentlewoman from Texas, and with that, I yield 5 minutes.
Gentlelady from Texas is recognized for 5 minutes.
How humbled I am to be on the floor of the House with fellow Americans who can speak eloquently about the history that is so deeply seated in my history and the history of so many Americans. How honored I am, Congresswoman Scanlon, that you come from the great state of Pennsylvania that has a storied history. For some of us, we remember Gettysburg, but there are many other aspects of which I've had the privilege of visiting. And I always say to America, learn America. It's a beautiful place, but it is a historic place. To my friend from Pennsylvania, the manager and Rules Committee member, how honored I am to have you, a fellow Pennsylvanian in terms of the majority's manager, be on the floor today. You know full well the fight of the Union soldiers, and I'm sure that you have in your constituency or in the state descendants of those fights. I can stand here today to say that this, as I've said with Senator Markey, Senator Cornyn, Senator Smith, and my colleague of long-suffering Danny Davis, who began this journey with me, the act or the thought of racial divide crushes to the floor on this bright and sunny day as we bring from the Senate the legislation that I offered, H.R. 1320, in the form of S. 475, the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act, companion legislation to H.R. 1320 in the House. The House was the leader, although I'm always glad to embrace the dynamic leadership of the Senate. We have over 160 more coming sponsors, bipartisan sponsors. My good friend and colleague from Texas, Randy Weber, actually represents Galveston, and I want to share his name on the floor. But I introduced this to make Juneteenth a federal holiday to commemorate the end of chattel slavery, America's original sin, and to bring about celebration, crushing racial divide down to a point of unity to this earth. It is because of the perseverance, the strength of our mutual communities, African Americans, that struggle for equality. Now, it would be remiss if I did not at least appoint that slavery was real. These are the brutal backs upon which the whip went over and over and over again. Not only men, women, children possibly, as history recounts. The history is limited because it is slave narratives that I might very humbly and respectfully say those stories are in broken English. But I remember one where a woman slave said to a husband that had been either taken away or had been a freed slave to another plantation. She said, "Husband, come back. Come back. They're about to sell me and your children to different places." That is what this moment in time in history represented for us. But look where we are today. Look where we are. In the midst of what people have described as racial divide, we have now come to a place where we acknowledge the 47 states that have done a celebratory, unified, and multicultural celebration of Juneteenth. Let me tell you why just for a moment. Juneteenth is as significant to African Americans as it will be to Americans, because we too are Americans. And it means freedom. Juneteenth, June 19th, 1865, General Granger found himself on the shores of Galveston. Senator Cornyn and myself will be in Galveston this very Juneteenth. How coincidental. Can you imagine how short I am? I will be standing maybe taller than Senator Cornyn. Forgive me for that, because it will be such an elevation of joy. But we will be there for a historic celebration. But Juneteenth came in June of 1865, and shortly thereafter, in the next few months, the 13th Amendment declared slavery unconstitutional in the United States. I think it is important to read these words. These are the words of General Granger, coming all the way from Washington, D.C., of General Order Number 3. You know, we like legislation, but I will tell you, can you imagine all of the slaves who were not free? 2 extra years, they gathered around. They knew something was happening. Oh, there was no telegram, or there was no cyber, there was no email or tweets. Here it is. The people of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the executive order
Expired.
of the United States, 30
I
seconds.
yield the gentlelady from Texas another minute.
Gentlelady
Thank
is
you.
recognized for another minute.
I thank you for your kindness. The people of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This invokes an absolute equality of rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection therefore existing between them becomes that of employer and hired labor. It is a day of freedom. I want to thank the Rules Committee, Chairman McGovern, Ranking Member Cole. I want to thank you for your commitment to bring this to. I want to thank Majority Leader Hoyer, Speaker Pelosi. I want to thank the Whip, Mr. Clyburn, the Chairman, Mr. Jeffries, and all of the leadership on both sides of the aisle that have brought us to this point. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields